Welcome to another deep dive with us. This time we're going way back to the 1950s.
Ooh, the 50s.
Yeah, we've got excerpts from this publication. It's called Mysticism in the 20th Century.
Catchy.
And it's really interesting, kind of a strange mix, kind of like an introductory pamphlet almost.
Okay.
But it's also like a collection of writings from, it seems like either a group or an individual promoting a spiritual movement. It's called the Aquarian Mission, or sometimes the Mission of the Aquarian Order.
Interesting.
And I gotta say, it's a pretty dense read. Lots of names, organizations, philosophies just thrown around left and right. It's
Well, you imagine, yeah.
a lot to take in.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a whirlwind, but I think we can make sense of it.
Yeah, well, we're gonna try.
Yeah.
So let's start broad. What's the big picture here? What are we dealing with?
Okay, so picture this. It's the 1950s.
Okay.
World's kind of recovering from a war. There's this looming tension with the whole Cold War thing going on. People
Right.
are searching for meaning, something more, and that's where the Aquarian Mission comes in. At their core, they're saying science and religion have just drifted too far apart,
Okay.
and that this separation is at the root of a lot of the world's problems.
So it's like we need a reset button, like a big
Kind of. More like a cosmic realignment, they would say.
cosmic realignment.
Yeah.
Okay.
They believe that we've actually entered a new era, the Aquarian Age.
Oh, okay.
And they pinpoint its start to the 1948 equinox. According to them, this new age demands a shift in consciousness, kind of a merging of different schools of thought to create something new and harmonious.
So it's not about like pushing one single religion or philosophy then.
Not at all. They're really advocating for a synthesis, pulling
Yeah.
from all these various traditions, bodies of knowledge. In a way, they present themselves as the facilitators of this grand unification.
That's where it gets, I don't know, kind of interesting, a little mysterious even.
Yeah.
When they mention this Universal Great Brotherhood, ancient civilizations, hidden knowledge, it's giving me some serious secret society vibes.
I mean, they're definitely leaning into the mystery. According to them, this Universal Great Brotherhood is like centuries old. And it's been working behind the scenes
Oh, wow.
to guide humanity's spiritual progress.
Mm.
And they claim to be its public face, so to speak.
That's a bold claim. And then there's their leader, Serge Raynaud de la Ferrière. This guy, he's practically a mythical figure in their telling.
For sure, a central figure in their narrative. They highlight his scientific background. He was actually president of the International Federation of Scientific Societies, which apparently includes some pretty prominent individuals.
Really?
Yeah. They also talk about like his extensive travels, his immersion in all sorts of Eastern spiritual practices.
Like that bit about him participating in the Kumbh Mela disguised as a sadhu.
Exactly. Pretty vivid image, right?
Right.
They really seem to emphasize his ability to move between different worlds and traditions.
Okay, so we've got this grand narrative, enigmatic leader. What about their actual teachings? Like, what did they believe? What did they do?
One of their key tenets is vegetarianism, and not just for the health benefits. They believe that things like tobacco, alcohol, and meat negatively impact what they call the astral body.
Wait, hold on. The astral body. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Sure, think of it as like an energetic double of your physical body.
Okay.
It's a concept that shows up in various esoteric traditions. Essentially, we have this subtle, energetic body that's affected by our actions, by what we consume.
Okay.
They believe that what we put into our physical bodies has spiritual consequences.
So, like, a burger isn't just a burger. It's a spiritual act.
Right. And it goes beyond just food.
Mm-hmm.
They also talk about these things called chakras. They describe them as nervofluid centers in the body that can be awakened through practices like hatha yoga.
Hold on. Nervofluid center.
I know, right?
Mhm.
It's one of those terms that might make you scratch your head a bit.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to find a scientific-sounding way to describe these energy centers that are such a big part of yogic traditions.
So, like, their own blend of science and spirituality.
They're definitely trying to bridge that gap. And they're not just focused on one specific tradition.
Right.
They encourage the study of various religious texts, the Bible, the Quran, the Vedas, but they really emphasize not getting bogged down in dogma.
So, more about finding the common ground.
Exactly. Understanding the underlying principles, the universal truths that run through all religions.
But how do they reconcile these, like, esoteric beliefs with the scientific method? It seems like a pretty big hurdle to overcome.
That's a great question, and one we should definitely keep in mind as we explore further.
Yeah.
It's clear they're presenting a very specific perspective. It's up to us to critically evaluate their claims. But I think before we get too deep into that, let's move on to the next section where they really start laying out some of their more I guess you could say, unusual ideas.
Okay, I'm ready. Hit me with it.
So it's interesting, actually, this document, it goes beyond like just outlining their structure, and it actually includes a piece of writing by de la Ferrière himself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's titled The Great Messages, Takes.
Takes. Sounds kind of like a spell or something.
Yeah, he actually means come and look. So he's basically saying, pay attention, this is important. He sees this shift into the Aquarian Age as a super pivotal moment in history.
Okay.
And he's kind of laying out his whole worldview.
All right, I'm listening. What's he got to say?
Well, he covers a lot of ground. Astrology, Bible, yoga, naturism, and kind of religion in general.
Okay.
He's trying to establish this foundation for the Aquarian mission's whole approach to spirituality.
Yeah, and it sounds like he's hitting on a lot of those same points we were talking about earlier, like astrology. Didn't they say the Aquarian Age was tied to like an astrological event?
He did.
Yeah.
And in this piece, de la Ferrière describes astrology as a way of understanding God's presence in the universe. He even says the sky is a great book opened by the love of God to the intelligence of man.
Wow, that's kind of poetic.
Right.
Yeah.
He's suggesting that astrology is more than just like horoscopes
Yeah.
and personality traits. It's a way to connect with something larger than ourselves.
Okay, but how does that fit with a scientific worldview? Because a lot of scientists would just call astrology superstition.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that's where the Aquarian missions approach gets, I think, a bit tricky.
Yeah.
Trying to walk that line between science and spirituality. And sometimes those two perspectives clash.
Yeah, for sure. Now, what about the Bible? They mentioned studying different religious texts.
Right.
How does de la Ferrière approach the Bible?
He definitely doesn't shy away from it. He calls it the Temple of Secrets, whose doors open with keys, giving powers in the spiritual world as well as the material world.
Keys, huh? That sounds pretty cryptic. Is he talking about like literal keys, or is this metaphorical?
Probably a bit of both, right?
Yeah.
He's suggesting that the Bible has this hidden knowledge that can be unlocked through some kind of esoteric understanding.
Okay.
But he doesn't really spell out like what those keys actually are.
Of course not. Gotta keep it mysterious.
It keeps that air of mystery going, yeah.
Right. Yeah. But it sounds like they're not just focused on Christianity.
You're right. He emphasizes that they also study, like the Talmud, the Quran, the Vedas.
Right.
They're pulling from all these different sources, just like they said.
So they're not trying to create their own, like, exclusive religion. It's more about finding those universal truths.
Exactly. And he actually states that pretty directly. He says, the search for truth does not attach itself to a dogma.
Okay.
It's about understanding the core of these teachings, not getting bogged down in, like, rituals or specific interpretations.
All right, makes sense. Okay, now what about yoga?
Mm.
They mentioned that earlier as a way to awaken those nervofluid centers or the chakras.
Right.
What does he say about yoga?
He describes it as, and I quote, the science which simplifies the union between the individual and the universe.
Okay.
Again, that emphasis on interconnectedness.
Yeah. He also mentions like 18 different types of yoga. I had no idea there were that many.
Yeah, he's referring to the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, which is this sacred Hindu text. It outlines these different paths to like spiritual realization. And he's suggesting that each chapter represents a different form of yoga.
So it's not just about like, stretching and being flexible and stuff.
Not in this context.
Yeah.
He's talking about a deeper understanding of like the self and the universe.
Right.
And he specifically highlights Hatha Yoga, which is, what most people think of when they think of yoga.
Right. The postures, the breathing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He sees it as a starting point for controlling the body and preparing for even deeper spiritual practices.
All right. So far, so good.
Yeah.
Then he kind of throws this curveball in there. He mentions naturism.
Yes.
What's that all about?
It's interesting that he includes that here. He seems to be advocating for a lifestyle that's like really in harmony with nature.
Okay.
Specifically mentioning vegetarianism. And he says straight out, the human being was not made to eat meat.
Whoa. Okay, that's a pretty strong stance there.
Yeah.
What's his reasoning behind that?
Well, he argues that our anatomy, like our teeth, our stomach, our intestines, just isn't designed for meat consumption. And he brings in that occult perspective again, claiming that consuming meat, tobacco, and alcohol negatively impacts the astral body.
Right, that subtle energy body.
Exactly.
Okay, so no steak and cigarettes for the spiritually enlightened. But why would those things affect our astral body?
Well, they believe that the astral body is susceptible to, like, impurities, right?
Okay.
And those substances are seen as introducing this kind of negativity.
Okay.
So he's suggesting that a vegetarian diet is not only healthier for the physical body, but also for our spiritual well-being.
All right, so purity on both levels.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how they tie all these seemingly like different ideas together, the diet, the spirituality, even the anatomy into this cohesive worldview.
Right.
But is this all just de la Ferrière's personal philosophy, or is this something the entire Aquarian mission subscribes to?
That's a good question. And I think, remember, this is just one piece of writing within a larger collection.
Right.
It's possible that there were variations in belief among, like, different members.
Sure.
But it's clear that de la Ferrière's ideas are pretty central to their overall philosophy.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, before we move on, there's one more topic I'm kind of curious about.
Okay.
He talks a lot about how the Aquarian mission isn't a religion. So what does he see it as?
He addresses that directly
Mm-hmm.
and actually says, like, there are no bad religions.
Oh, okay.
He believes that all religions have value
Mm.
and that the Aquarian mission isn't meant to replace them or be, like, better than any other religion.
Right.
He sees it as more of a synthesis,
Yeah.
bringing together those principles from different traditions.
Yeah.
And he even goes so far as to say the Aquarian order is the expression of the eternal word, is the truth, since it is the synthesis.
Wow, he's basically saying the Aquarian mission represents the ultimate truth because it encompasses all truths.
Yeah, he's definitely making a big statement there.
Yeah.
And he suggests that the Aquarian order isn't, like, something totally new, but rather it's the latest manifestation of this, centuries-old Universal Great Brotherhood that's been guiding humanity all along.
Right.
It's a pretty compelling narrative, even if it's hard to verify.
Definitely sparks the imagination.
Yeah.
But what about the more practical side of things? Aside from vegetarianism and yoga, what are some of the specific practices that they advocate for?
Well, they emphasize studying ancient texts, esoteric traditions, like Kabbalah, Theosophy, Rosicrucianism. They even talk about the importance of understanding the mathematical constant.
Pi. Like 3.14. What does that have to do with spirituality?
Well, they connect it to hidden codes in the Bible and the geometry of the universe. They suggest it's not just a mathematical concept, but it's this fundamental principle of creation,
Okay.
like a key to unlocking hidden knowledge.
All right, now we're getting into the really esoteric stuff. But I gotta admit, I'm starting to see how they're weaving all these seemingly disparate ideas into this larger web of meaning.
Exactly. They're creating this, like, intricate tapestry of knowledge,
Yeah.
drawing from both Eastern and Western traditions, ancient wisdom, and even modern science. It's a unique blend for sure.
It also requires a certain leap of faith, though, doesn't it? You have to be willing to entertain ideas that might seem far-fetched at first glance.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important to approach this material with a critical mind, but also with a sense of curiosity and open-mindedness. Sometimes the most rewarding discoveries come from, venturing outside of our comfort zones.
Well said. Now, I'm curious to see where they go next. They've laid out their philosophy, some of their key practices. What else do they get into in this mysticism in the 20th century thing?
Well, that's what we're about to find out. The document actually continues with some even more in-depth explorations of specific concepts,
Oh, okay.
like the idea of occultism.
Occultism. Okay, that sounds a little spooky. Are we talking like seances and Ouija boards?
Not quite. In this context, occultism refers to the study of hidden knowledge and the workings of the universe that aren't, like, readily apparent to our senses. It's about uncovering those mysteries of existence, but not necessarily in, like, a spooky way.
So more like esoteric science than supernatural phenomena.
Yeah, you could say that. And they get into some pretty mind-boggling concepts, like the idea that we actually have 7 different bodies, each originating from a different planet.
Oh, hold on, 7 bodies. I thought we only had 1.
They're suggesting that we have these multiple layers of existence,
Yeah.
beyond the physical body that we can perceive with our senses.
Right.
And these other bodies, they say, are more subtle, energetic, and they play a role in our spiritual evolution. And it actually ties into their discussion about the astral body earlier.
Right, that etheric double.
Exactly, which can be affected by our actions and thoughts.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. It's like they're presenting a whole new map of reality.
Right. And they emphasize that this knowledge isn't something you just, like, pick up from a book. They talk about the importance of a guru or a spiritual guide, someone who's already traversed this path and can guide others.
So it's not enough to just like read about it. You need to experience it directly with a teacher.
That seems to be their belief. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're emphasizing the importance of like direct transmission of knowledge,
Yeah.
the kind of learning that happens outside of traditional settings.
It's interesting how they blend like Eastern and Western concepts,
Yeah.
talking about chakras and the astral body, but also referencing the Bible and Christian traditions.
That's the hallmark of their approach, right?
Right.
Synthesis.
Right.
They're not trying to create this new religion, but rather unveil the common threads that run through all spiritual teachings.
It's like they're weaving a tapestry of wisdom, drawing from these different traditions to create a more, I don't know, richer, more nuanced understanding of reality.
Beautifully put. And that tapestry gets even more intricate as they delve into specific esoteric practices like hatha yoga and the awakening of the chakras. They even offer this detailed description of the 7 main chakras, their locations in the body, their corresponding elements and planets, and their potential for spiritual realization.
Wait, they actually describe the chakras? I've heard about them, but I never really understood like what they are.
They do. It's surprisingly detailed, considering this is just an excerpt.
Wow.
So they start with the Muladhara chakra, which is located at the base of the spine, and they say that's the foundation of like our physical energy and our survival instincts.
Okay, and what about the other ones?
Well, they go on to describe the Svadhisthana chakra, which is associated with emotions and creativity, the Manipura chakra, linked to willpower and self-esteem, the Anahata chakra, related to love and compassion, the Vishuddha chakra, connected to communication and self-expression, and then the Ajna chakra, which is often referred to as the third eye, and they say that governs intuition and spiritual insight.
Wow, okay. That's a whole system. It's like they're mapping out the energetic blueprint of a human being.
Exactly. Yeah. And they emphasize that by awakening these chakras through specific practices, we can unlock our full potential, achieve these higher states of consciousness.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. It's like we're getting a crash course in esoteric anatomy and physiology.
And it doesn't stop there.
Yeah.
They go on to describe the process of Kundalini awakening, which is the rising of this, like, powerful energy force up the spine.
Kundalini, huh. That sounds intense. Do they actually give, like, instructions on how to awaken this energy?
They don't get into that level of detail in this excerpt.
Okay.
But they do emphasize the importance of proper guidance
Right.
and preparation before attempting such practices. It's not something to be taken lightly.
I can imagine. This is all incredibly fascinating, but it's also a lot to take in.
Right.
It's like peeling back the layers of reality and discovering this whole other dimension of existence.
I think that's the essence of, the occult journey.
Yeah.
Unveiling those hidden truths of the universe and of our own true nature.
Yeah. It's a journey that definitely requires an open mind and a willingness to challenge, everything we thought we knew.
Absolutely. And as we delve deeper into this material, we're going to encounter even more thought-provoking concepts and practices that will challenge our perspectives
Oh, I'm sure.
and expand our understanding of what's possible.
Okay.
Stay tuned, because there's much more to uncover.
All right, so much to think about. Chakras, different bodies, all these cosmic energies. My head's spinning a bit, but hit me with it.
Yeah.
What else did they explore in these excerpts?
Well, you remember how they kept mentioning that mathematical constant pi? Turns out that wasn't just a random aside.
Right.
Ferrière sees it as like a key to unlocking hidden knowledge.
Wait, pi, you mean like the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter? I don't really see the spiritual connection there.
He gets pretty specific, actually.
Okay.
Claims that a word in Isaiah 9.6, Lamarb, contains a hidden code related to pi.
Whoa.
And it doesn't stop there. He links pi to the geometry of the universe, suggesting that it's a fundamental principle of creation.
So pi is like this secret language encoded in like the fabric of reality.
Pretty much. And he connects it to other traditions, too.
Okay.
Like, he draws this parallel between the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, which are important in Kabbalah, and the 22 regular polygons that can be inscribed in a circle, which again ties back to pi.
It's like he's finding these hidden connections everywhere. It reminds me of how they were talking about like synthesizing different traditions.
Exactly. He even links pi to the Buddhist concept of the 248 mental and material phenomena.
Okay, so like a mathematical underpinning to Buddhist philosophy.
Yeah, exactly. That's a lot to unpack, I know.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you guys mentioned the planet Pluto earlier and its connection to Buddhism, but you didn't really explain it.
Right. Well, Ferrière sees a parallel between Pluto's symbolism, the underworld, transformation, death, and the Buddhist emphasis on suffering and the path to liberation.
So Pluto as a symbol of like suffering, but also the potential for overcoming it. That's a pretty different way to think about Pluto.
Right, and he weaves in numerology too,
Of course.
pointing out that Pluto's 238-year orbit is the sum of Neptune's 164-year orbit and Uranus's 84-year orbit. Again, it's all about those hidden patterns and connections.
It's amazing how he pulls together all these different systems, astronomy, numerology, spirituality. Reminds me of how they talked about pyramids earlier. Did they go into any more detail about that?
They did. De la Ferrière sees pyramids, especially the Great Pyramid of Giza, as these symbolic representations of ancient wisdom and esoteric knowledge.
Okay.
Connects them to Freemasonry, suggesting that the pyramid's internal structure mirrors their initiatic rituals and symbolism.
So the pyramid is like a blueprint for spiritual initiation.
That's one way to interpret it. He also points out the pyramid's precise astronomical alignment and its mathematical proportions,
Right.
suggesting that there's this deeper level of knowledge encoded in its design.
It's pretty incredible to think that these ancient structures might have such profound meaning. Speaking of ancient cultures, they also mentioned Atlantis and Lemuria. Did they say anything more about those?
They didn't really go into too much detail,
Okay.
but de la Ferrière seems to accept their existence as fact, citing Plato's writings about Atlantis and the Mayan sacred text, the Popol Vuh,
Okay.
as evidence. He suggests that these lost civilizations possessed advanced knowledge and spiritual wisdom that has been lost over time.
Atlantis, Lemuria, it's like something out of a fantasy novel. But it's fascinating to think about. And they even mentioned these magic centers still operating in the world today. Like,
Right.
what did they have to say about that?
He's pretty vague on the specifics,
Okay.
but it seems like he's referring to like hidden places where esoteric knowledge and practices are preserved and transmitted. He mentioned places like Tibet, the Himalayas, and some locations in Central and South America as possible sites for these centers.
So secret societies, hidden knowledge, ancient wisdom, it's
Yeah.
all very mysterious and intriguing. But where does it all lead? What's the point of exploring all these esoteric traditions and practices?
Well, de la Ferrière suggests that the ultimate goal is spiritual realization, the union of the individual soul with the universal soul, transcendence of suffering, attainment of enlightenment.
Enlightenment, that's pretty lofty. How do we even get there? What are the steps?
He emphasizes self-discipline, study, meditation, and the guidance of a qualified teacher.
Right.
He also advocates for a lifestyle in harmony with nature. Remember their focus on vegetarianism.
Right, yeah.
Avoiding substances that cloud the mind, like alcohol and tobacco. Basically cultivating both inner and outer purity.
So it's this combination of inner work and also aligning your actions with your spiritual aspirations.
Exactly. And he stresses understanding different spiritual traditions,
Okay.
not just intellectually, but experientially.
Right.
It's a lifelong journey of discovery and transformation.
And he believes that we're all kind of on this journey, whether we realize it or not.
That's right. He sees the Aquarian mission as a way to help people accelerate their spiritual evolution and prepare for the coming Aquarian Age, which he believes will be an era of peace and spiritual awakening.
It's a pretty inspiring vision of the future, even if some of the details are a bit, out there. But I think that's the beauty of exploring these esoteric ideas.
Right.
They challenge us and open our minds to new possibilities.
I completely agree. And remember, this is just a starting point. The journey of discovery is just beginning.
Well said. Thanks for guiding me through all of this fascinating material. It's been pretty eye-opening.
The pleasure was all mine. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep that wonder alive.